Hey everybody, and welcome back to Polar Opposites. Today it's just going to be myself, Eric, and Annie Aggens joining
Hi, everyone.
with our other regular panelists out enjoying the Midwestern summer sun. And today we want to take some time to talk about polar expedition training tips. You know, it's the summertime and everyone's eager to get outside. At least here in the Northern Hemisphere. And it's never too early to think about training for your next polar expedition. So, yeah, Annie, what do you think about as far as training goes?
You know, I'm so glad that we're talking about this because training for your polar expedition can have such an impact on how much fun you have and how relaxed you are when you're out there, and the amount of anxiety or lack of anxiety you have leading up to the expedition. But you know, we always say that an ounce of training is worth a pound of gold on the expedition. And so I'm really glad that we're having this conversation. I actually have like a 5-step or like kind of a 5-pronged approach to my training, with using for instance, my 5 fingers, one different thing on each finger, which helps me remember some things when I'm deciding what I want to do. But but before I cover any of those, I just want to mention that, you know, one of the great things about polar expedition travel is that you don't have to be a triathlete or a world-class athlete. You know, this is a really accessible type of expedition travel because we're, at least at the North Pole, we're not at altitude. So you're in an oxygen-rich environment. And it's really, and I know you'll agree with this, it's really about putting one foot in front of the next and really learning about your body, which I bet will come up. But in any case, so the first thing that I like to do is I like to identify if there's anything special that I need to work on. A couple of years ago, I really needed to help my lower back because I was having some lower back issues. So I kind of had that as an overlying theme to my training. And I consulted a physical trainer and a physical therapist to give me some stretches and things that I could incorporate it to do. But we've had a lot of people come who have had like plantar fasciitis, or they know that they tend to be slow and they want to work on that. So identifying personal challenges that you might have or personal issues with your body that you want to address, I think is a great place to start.
Yeah, I agree. And I think setting some goals for your training and tracking your progress is a really good way to do it. And I happen to be particularly bad at that. I generally don't enjoy training for the sake of training. And so one thing that I try to do is work in my practice into other activities. So if it's, just planning a camping trip, I'm getting to know my stove really well, my tent, even just like that's practicing packing and layering, and it's part of getting to know your body.
Yeah.
Because I do find it really, really difficult to train just for the sake of training.
Yeah, I agree. Although every so often I say to myself, like, hey, I come back to that, like, this is going to make your expedition so much more fun if you just get out there right now and go do X, Y, or Z. So when I'm thinking about what I need to do to train, one of my fingers, got to find my webcam. One of my fingers is building strength. And when I think about building strength, I'm thinking about really building, I like to think about like, I use P and P. I'm building for power. I'm working on strength for both power and protection. So the power makes sense, right? You're working on your core because you want to be able to rely on it for power when you need to get up and over that little pressure ridge or something like that, or when you're in hour 6 of your 8-hour day of pulling. But the second P is becoming increasingly more important as I get older, and that's for protection. So I'm really also doing strength building to protect my lower back and to protect my knees against instability or injury, protect my ankles, my Achilles area. So I'm really building strength with a plan. So going back to your idea of having a plan, I'm not just out there really, doing squats for the sake of squats. I'm doing them because I know that they're going to help me both build power and protection on my body. So I'm really thinking about those strength exercises with my specific goals in mind.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, especially if they don't train regularly already, tend to focus strictly on one thing, and whether that's doing stairs and cardio, or just tire pulling, which we'll come back to in a minute, or only strength training. This far, if you're months ahead of an expedition, it's a great time to really vary it up. Focus on everything.
Totally.
Have some stairs in the mix. Do some strength training. If you don't have a lot of time, the high intensity interval workouts are incredible. You'll be beat in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And one thing in particular that I think is to focus on your flexibility, because I find that that's neglected a lot. And doing some yoga it's not only is it really great practice for folding up inside of a tent, especially when you're as tall as I am, but like you said, it helps protect your joints and just it keeps everything moving slowly. And my favorite part about it is if I'm not feeling the motivation to work out, taking a half an hour, 45 minutes to do yoga is, it doesn't even feel like a workout. It's more like relaxing.
Yeah, and that doing yoga, that touches base on one of my second fingers, and that's balance training. And yoga is so good for that, because having good balance and having all those little stability muscles working for you and having them not be kind of new to you on an expedition will really help you out on those tricky days when you can't see 2 feet in front of you, or maybe not even 1 foot in front of you, and you don't know whether you're skiing on flat surface or a side slope, or if you're going over a pressure ridge. You just don't know. So I love your idea of yoga, and kind of piggybacking on that, there's all sorts of balance techniques, all sorts of balance exercises. All you have to do is Google it and you'll come up with 20. But using a balance board, or one of those kind of half balls that you can stand on and trying to reach things off the ground, or blindfolding yourself and trying to do some tasks where you're standing on 1 foot or whatnot. Tons of different balance exercises, but that's a great one. I really like that you brought that up. One of my third finger is cardio training, and just we sort of touched on that, building up a really good aerobic endurance. And as you said, mixing that up so that if you're doing, you can, cycling, walking fast, jogging, swimming, really anything. But I love it when you can combine 2 things and kind of combine the cardio with the strength training. So if you're walking, consider finding a hill, or consider finding steps. Or if you're at the gym, or at home, putting the treadmill on an incline really kind of helps tackle 2 of those. And if you are doing a treadmill or a Stairmaster, I would really recommend, going back to the balance, avoid using the handlebars, avoid using the guide rails, because it's really easy to kind of bend over and rely on those when you're getting tired. But it can be tricky sometimes doing the Stairmaster without having your hands on the rails. Of course, use them if you feel unstable, but it's great balance training to just do one of those 2 activities, Stairmaster or treadmill, and just don't put your hands on those railings.
Mm. Yeah, one thing to note on cardio too is, having an hour-long cardio session is great. But I think it's also really important to incorporate longer distance exercises as well, even if that's, a day hike that lasts, 6 hours or 8 hours, being able to work up to those longer stretches, because on an expedition, you're going to be, moving for potentially 8 to 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
And allowing your body to get used to what that feels like, rather than only training for 1 hour or 45 minutes during a day.
Yeah.
Getting that kind of lower intensity exercise for a much longer period of time.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. And that also, again, relieves some of the anxiety that some people have about, like, will I be able to handle a long day? And the answer is yes. You will be able to handle it. And having a couple of those sessions under your belt can be a nice confidence booster. And that segues nicely into sled pulling, because that's a great way to have some of those longer endurance. Of course you can go out on long walks and whatnot, but at some point in your training, it's a great idea, especially if you're on a ski and pulk expedition, to get to go out and start pulling something like a tire. We've got a video in our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/PolarExplorers, about tire training for an expedition that you can watch. And we can answer your questions about that too. Just reach out to us anytime. But it's such a great way to train because it really simulates pulling a sled so well. You will, especially if you're doing it in the months leading up to your expedition, you'll get out on the ice and you'll start taking those first 20 steps of your expedition, and your body will say, hey, I remember this. I've done this before. And, it's just a load off. You can say, okay, this is what I was feeling back, in December or back in November or even August. When I was pulling, and my body knows what to do, and I know what to expect from this situation right here. And when you are pulling tires, I really think it's a good idea to adjust your weight. So sometimes you're pulling a lighter load and you're going faster, and sometimes you're pulling a heavier load, maybe 2 tires or a tire with a bag of dog food in it resting on top, a heavier load for a shorter distance and at a slower pace. Because when we're out on our expeditions, conditions vary quite a bit. And we might find that in the first hour of a day, we have got kind of rougher conditions. Maybe the snow's sticky and it feels like you're pulling really heavy. And then all of a sudden you hit a great patch of ice, or it warms up a little bit. The snow begins to get a little melty and you're going really fast, and you want to be able to adjust to that. So if you've got great conditions, you want to be able to pick up your pace and move faster. And if you've only trained at one pace and one intensity level, then you're much less able to adjust to those changing conditions while you're actually on the expedition. So change up your pace and your weight. Practice going faster for a shorter distance. Practice lightening the load and going faster, and also going slower with a heavier load. And also change up the terrain that you're on. So if you're always pulling on a sandy beach, or if you're always pulling on a field of grass, get out and pull on concrete. That's going to be easier, and you're going to be able to go faster. Or get out and go on a forest floor. Again, that will feel faster. Or if you are always on the sidewalk, go on a grassy field. It's going to feel heavier, and it'll give you a different feeling and a different sense. And then one more thing on that, I just remembered, in addition to changing up the terrain, change up the other variables. Go out when maybe you're feeling a little tired. Go out when it's raining. Create some other variable in your training so that you're not only training, but there's something else going on that you're thinking about. Because how often, Eric, have you been pulling a sled or something, but there's something else you're thinking about, whether it's a face mask that's just not fitting you right, or maybe you didn't sleep well the night before, right?
Yeah, all the time.
Or there's a wind that's just coming at you from the left and it's driving you nuts. And if you've only trained in perfect conditions, so you're like, I got this training thing down, but you've had no other variables or no other little challenges affecting you while you're pulling, then you're going to get out there and you're going to be like, oh my gosh, my arm is just kind of in a strange mood today. But all I can think about is that arm, and it's affecting how I can pull because I can't think about 2 things at once.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'll tack onto that. And this will be my final tip for the day. And that's to, get involved with something that forces you to have to manage your heat and your layering system. So like you said, going out when it's raining or windy for a long stretch, or going cycling, or going backpacking or mountaineering or whatever it is. These activities kind of force you to learn how your body works. Learn how hot you run, what layers work well for you. And I guarantee, once you get too sweaty when you're wearing a wool base layer and a raincoat, you're never going to want to get to that point ever again.
Yeah.
So getting to know your body, learning, the caloric intake that you need, the foods that give you energy, and the foods that you like to eat.
Yeah, right.
I think that's a huge step up in polar training.
Yeah, I do too. And you know what? We're going to have a part 2 on this, because there's a lot of little tips that you're making me think about, you know, training for your breaks, training your systems that you're going to use every single day, you know, if you're all those, and training your body and your mind to understand your body. So I think this is going to have to be the part 1 of polar training tips, because I think there's enough really great info and great tips that we have for a part 2, but that'll have to wait till next week, when hopefully we can get some other people on board and get their information and their tips and secrets for getting you ready for your polar expedition.
Absolutely. And, you know, I know that we've thrown a lot of information out there just now, and you know, if you're preparing for an expedition for the first time, or you know, you're not training regularly, this might seem kind of overwhelming. The bottom line is just to get out and, you know, exercise and enjoy yourself, and you know, learn about your systems.
Totally. And it really does come down to the fact that it's all about just putting one foot in front of the next. There's nothing technologically super difficult about skiing to the North or South Poles. You know, it's about learning about your body, listening to your body, and then putting one foot right in front of the next, time after time.
All right, well, we'll call it right there for this installment, but we will be back again with a part 2, because I'm sure that we have a lot of more tips that have come to mind. I know that I have several.
Yeah, me too. So at least this might get people started if they're planning on joining us in April, or in January at the South Pole, or for Vatnajökull in May, or Greenland. This can get you going until we meet again.
All right, thanks a lot, Annie, and thank you everybody for tuning in. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at polarexplorers.com.
Or add a comment in the Facebook things, because that's how we get a lot of our
if you have any questions that you would like to ask.
Yeah.
But for now, that's all, and we'll see you next week.
See you later. Thanks. Bye-bye.